Welcome to the CFMU 93.3 FM radio show and podcast, The Coolest Journey, where my guests and I explore the intersections of health and environment through reflections, tips, and tools for everyday living so we can all improve our lives. I'm your host, Hélène Caron. Today's episode is one I feel strongly about. And honestly, it's one that feels urgent. We'll be talking about open water swimming or dipping, floating, whatever people do in the water. Because last Saturday, a 67-year-old man died while partaking in the Kelowna Across the Lake swim, an event that's been run for decades. We don't know the full story. It's tragic for so many people involved. But we do know this. He showed up. He got in the water. He was part of a community. And his death is a reminder that no matter your experience level, no matter how familiar you are with the water, and no matter how many lifeguards or volunteers in that case are on site, things can go wrong and fast. Basically, whether you're a seasoned open water swimmer, a weekend lake jumper, or someone who's just starting to fall in love with cold water or open water, or cold open water, everyone should have some type of swimming safety plan. So today we are talking about exactly that. What should you consider to create your own swimming safety plans? And it's plans plural, not singular, because it could vary depending on where you swim. So this episode is not just for marathon swimmers crossing 106 kilometers of open water, not just for elite athletes. This is for all of us, whether you're crossing a lake, joining a local swim event, or heading to the pool down the street with lifeguards on duty. Having a plan is critical. It could save your life. My guest today is quite experienced in the matter with her years of marathon swimming. Jessi Harewicz will talk to us about how she prepares her own swim safety plans, like the one she mentioned in the past Coolest Journey episode recorded with her prior to her Lake Okanagan swim. Jessi, welcome back to the Coolest Journey.
Thank you.
Jessi, before we start talking about the elements of a swim safety plan, can you just let us know how it went for you for the Lake Okanagan event that you had planned?
Well, first of all, it wasn't an event. It's a solo attempt. So I don't call them events because you don't need
Okay.
permits or that's okay. A lot of people say event and I just say, well, it's like an attempt. It's not a race. It's not an event. It's an attempt.
It's a challenge,
Events.
your own
Yeah.
personal
Yeah.
challenge. Yeah.
Yeah. An event tends to refer to more than one generally. Yes, I had a team of 8 people on a sailboat helping me, but yeah, so we started at the lake at I think around 1 a.m. on the Friday. And it was a lot. It was a bit of a rush just to get to the start in the first place. We had a lot of extra stuff we had to do this time. And unfortunately, 10 hours in, I started getting severe. It wasn't nausea, but it was severe muscle cramping in my lower stomach. And unfortunately, I started vomiting, which I've done before, but never in a lake. It's very common unfortunately, in salt water. But it kept persisting. Vomiting did not help. I could not keep much solid food down, and it persisted for almost eight. I didn't realize it was like 7 or 8 hours. I didn't realize that I was floating on my back, trying really, really hard to keep going. But every time I tried moving my body side to side, focusing on front crawl technique, it just wouldn't go away. And I kept looking down the lake, and it was probably one of the most traumatic experiences I've ever had in some of the calmest, warmest water I've ever had, where I can float. I can float pretty well, especially when I'm feeling sick. But yeah, unfortunately, we had to finish the swim. My crew, they tried so many tricks and so many things, and we had so much extra backup food and different things on the boat. And unfortunately, they convinced me to swim to Whiskey Island, which is just before Carr's Landing, and I was able to complete 30 kilometers of the swim, which at my pace I would have probably done the 30K in probably about maybe less than 12 hours, but I think it ended up being 18 hours at the end. And yeah, it
Mhm.
was everybody most almost if you do this is my 10th year now, so 9 years since I swam the English Channel and done a marathon almost every year since then, at least a 30 to 40K. So whether it's lake or ocean, mostly ocean. So yeah, it was a very, very, very difficult thing, and but fortunately I had a lot of experienced people on my boat, and we pulled out all the tricks, and nothing worked. It was
And
consistent pain.
and and it and I mean, I don't know if interestingly is the right word, but you were doing this to raise funds for mental health for the youth in that area. And if people are still willing to donate, they can go online, correct? And they can
Yes,
donate
I'll put the
directly
link. I'll give you the link still. I think we're still opening donations probably for another week or so.
okay.
Did go on CTV the other day, and I think we might be up to 10,500. Yeah, we
Yes.
made our goal definitely right by the end of the swim. We were already in the $8,000 range, and I think by the time I finished the swim, we were at 10 grand even. So it was
Mhm.
funny enough. One of my most successful personal philanthropic contributions to the local community of Lake Okanagan, which is I have raised funds for a few different organizations, and I try and focus. Last time I raised funds for the Squamish Search and Rescue when I swam down Howe Sound, one of my many swims at Catsim Howe Sound. I the last yeah, and I've also done Life Saving Society. So we're trying to not just raise money for the sake of raising money, but trying to raise awareness to the actual communities that we swim in, because we swim through First Nations land, through Canada government, private. Well, the water's not private in Canada; it's federally regulated. But we swim through different communities, and we want to bring awareness to local causes, especially when it comes to safety and mental health, as
Mhm.
that's probably the reason why most people I know swim to a certain extent for mental health, because we all know that swimming is not that exciting. We love it, but it's really not exciting. And a lot of
Well,
us,
wait, when we say not exciting, because I know what you mean, but it's because we have our face in the water. We don't necessarily see these beautiful vistas like we would if we're trail running, and we can't really have a chat with someone. So in terms of socializing, it's pretty low. And when you've got your face down looking at a dark lake in the middle of the night, that is definitely not exciting. I agree with you.
I love swimming at night. Actually, funny enough, like it was actually kind of choppy that night, and I love swimming at night. I remember knowing that we weren't going as fast as possible, but as soon as the water calmed down, like right when I DNF'd, it was like so calm. It was so hot, but it was so calm, and it was just like yeah, it was really horrible. But yeah, we literally tried everything, and we got the kayak in the water, and my dad and me got to do a last little, like the last couple 100 meters together, and it was, again, I would, and never at any point was I ever in any danger. We tried. We had lots of Tylenol, Advil. I couldn't really keep anything down that was solid, so we had to crush pills. And I was drinking. I was drinking so much water. Honestly, I was going to the bathroom for the next 12 hours afterwards. Like I was not dehydrated, but I wasn't necessarily getting enough salts and things. Like we tried. I don't do well with electrolytes, especially when I'm not feeling well. My stomach just doesn't like anything. So I was drinking a lot of plain water, some solid bread, that I love white, not I don't like white bread, but it was sourdough. It was great. It stayed down. But to think about continuously going, I understand maybe 3 to 6 hours you can do it, but to go for another 30 hours,
Mhm.
it was just not necessarily. Again, we had everything on boat. I never once was in danger. Again, probably because I float like a seal and in that warm water. But and people are probably also going to ask, well, would I do it again? And maybe. There's a lot of logistics. I have been offered boats and support, but I might need to give it a year or two, because I do have a lot of other personal challenges and swims that I do want to finish in the next
Mhm.
year and a half. So I might consider it, but I would definitely go back when it was a little cooler. I did a lot of training. I did the appropriate training. I did a lot of training in melting hot sun. But when it comes to being sick, I usually find, like, if you are ill, it's also easier when it's a little cooler. But I
Yes.
also wouldn't be eating. I think I ate something bad before I got in the water, because it just didn't come up, and I have to be a bit more diligent probably before I get in the water next time of what exactly I'm eating. I didn't have a lot of time to relax before this swim. It was a lot of. We learned a lot of things. We debriefed a lot. And we learned a lot of things about how to get, even especially the crew, food and everything better and more efficient. And it was, yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot to plan.
So I'm really happy that you talked about all of these elements of your swim because to bridge this into creating our own swimming safety plans, basically you're telling us, okay, so this was part of your safety plan or part of your swim plan. You had different foods on board. You had a crew of 8 people. And now this is specific to the challenge that you were doing. But, if someone is just swimming, going for a swim, you still want to have other people around you. So you had people with you. You had someone in the water. Shouldn't say in the water. Your dad was on his kayak, I'm assuming.
Mm-hmm.
And you
Yeah.
also had the crew on a different boat, correct?
Yes. Yes, we had so the way that we the way that we structured the swim was that, and we've done this before because I have done a 30-hour before. We have we had well we basically had two vessels. We actually had a sailboat towing and a secondary boat as a backup support. Most channel swims. Sorry, sorry, I have a lot of problems with my work stuff right now. So primarily on an expedition like this, because it's a multi-day, so anything over 24 hours, they highly recommend that you have multiple, well, not necessarily multiple vessels, but definitely multiple people for each role. Marathon Swimming Federation
It's a
is
worldwide body,
it,
really, that
it's an independent organization. Yes, it is primarily run out of the U.S., but actually now their lead guy lives in Australia. It is primarily run out of the United States, but it is a collective of international swimmers that have come together to create a database of international swims, and they primarily. I have to start with this because this is the basis of a lot of the safety things that I do,
Mhm.
because they basically took the English Channel rules and they wanted to allow for people who could not afford to go and do the English Channel or just don't have the time or to go and do that because it's a big expedition just to get all the way over England and then maybe swim. But Marathon Swimming Federation, marathons being anything over 10 kilometers, an organization that will ratify if you collect your own data and get your own swim completed, you can submit all the information to them and then they will thus publish. Not only even giving a certificate is relative. It's we don't do this really for that. We do it for a little bit of recognition, but really we just do it because we want to have it on record. So they publish the data and they will publicly put it on a database. And they're creating an amazing worldwide database for swims internationally. They also have a solo swims database, which they also collect information as a secondary. They collect information from around the world to organizations that they will not ratify something. They will only ratify something where there is not an organization that is dominantly active and helping swimmers not necessarily facilitate swims, but get swims ratified. So, like down in Seattle, we have the Northwest Open Water Swimming Association, which is the closest. In Ontario, we have Solo Swims of Ontario that ratifies those swims. So, as a bigger perspective to understanding the sport of long distance marathon swimming, anything over 10 kilometers, no wet. With this specifics, my no wetsuit, no touching the boat, English Channel rules, Marathon Swimming Federation. In my personal opinion, there is a few other organizations out there, but in my personal opinion, they've been doing it for one of the longest, and they have a format that they have refined, and they are trying to keep as equal. But it is actually more work than if you go to Swim the English Channel. They kind of do everything for you. You kind of show up, you wait for your window, you don't have to facilitate your own pilot. Marathon Swimming Federation does have a series of podcasts now where they have started talking about planning and advice. But like even the way that I'm going to be giving information today, but even sorry, so many things going on.
and as you're referencing MSF, Marathon Swimming Federation, I just want to say that there are other few organizations out there with some templates for swimming safety plans, like Swim Canada, WOWSA, and there's a number of other
I
ones.
don't know if Swim Canada, this is where I'm going to say, I don't know if Swim Canada has anything. I
That's
have to
okay,
check
but
that. And World Open Water, you have to be careful as well. Even though I do know people there is, I don't think Swim Canada has guidelines potential. I know that like Swim Ireland will have some guidelines, but a lot of Swim Canada represents more Olympic swimming and pool swimming, even though there is open water in that. They don't necessarily recognize even English Channel swimming. I know that Swim Australia never did not recognize like Chloe McCardell's crossings because it's a
Right.
very different style of swimming. So we can show people on a smaller scale. Yes, we can show people some information, but this is information that I still need to follow up on because most of my experiences come from working in aquatics. I don't want to talk about specifics, but I work in aquatics and also running running events with high levels of active safety monitoring in different conditions. As you know, for Vancouver Open Water Swimming Association, which I do not mind, quoting them, but they are a very different. But that is a wetsuit and non-wetsuit, probably more similar to what happened in Lake Okanagan, but because I wasn't there and I don't actually know any of the specifics, because people have died. I mean, English Channel, I think there are only like 11 or 12 or 13 deaths in 140 years, or like 100 years
Right.
of active swimming. So in terms of that, it's a very low death rate if you compare it to things like, climbing Mount Everest or other kind of large expedition swimming. We are not the biggest controversy, I think, in open water swimming with when you're doing solo next to a boat is we do not allow swim buddies, because when you are not in a wetsuit, you do not float. I mean, I float because I'm breathing, but when breathing stops, it's potential. So there has been deaths in New York City, but again, information never gets released, really,
Yeah.
unless there's an inquest. Information doesn't get released. So a lot of that is I have a lot of experience at preventative because of my job and because of the work that I've done with large groups of, everything from 20 to 300 swimmers, both experienced and inexperienced. And there's a lot of
Mhm.
very experienced swimmers that come to our races sometimes thinking they've swum in open water before, and they haven't done it in a while or something. I think the biggest thing that I think, because you really encourage it, is not necessarily swimming throughout the whole entire year, but always doing especially if your skin, lots of acclimation, getting used to different conditions every year. I mean, I pick and choose. I'm 10 years in. I pick and choose some of my conditions, but I didn't swim a lot of rough water in preparation for this, but I was working more on speed or maintaining my speed through longer distances.
Mhm.
But then again, I went in the ocean the other day and swam like a 2 hour in rough water. And yeah, my upper shoulders, my upper chops are a little more sore, and it was like a little cooler, thank God, than Lake Okanagan. But I was fine because
Right.
I've spent years developing this, and I don't really stop. I didn't swim this winter very much, but I don't stop for more than a few months at a time.
So I'm just going to interrupt you here because we're talking about here confidence and ability here, right? Because you've been swimming for so long, you know your body and the body of water as well that you're swimming in. Although, like me, I know you assess the conditions before going in and making the call go, no go, because you have your own personal safety plan. So if we're stepping back and looking at the big picture for those who are listening and who are not marathon swimmers, basically, we're looking at different elements that would be part of a swim safety plan. Whether we're looking at Swim Canada, we're looking at WOWSA, we're looking at MSF,
Please don't look at
and
Swim Canada. I don't know anything about
there's
Swim Canada
there's
right now.
there's there I looked at it and there is a template that people can
Okay.
use, but they emphasize that on their website. They say it's a template. It needs to be personalized to your situation, so basically to you as a swimmer and
Mhm.
also to the body of water that you're going to be swimming. And it's the same as well with WOWSA. I'm mentioning this because I want to make sure that we're bringing it back to the average person who's listening and not necessarily to the marathon swimmers who are getting ready out there. So when we're looking at swim plans, even for the pool, let's start even like super basic. And I'm gonna I know that you've got a lot of experience working in pools. I also have experience working in pools. My experience is a lot older than yours. Like it was a long time ago that I was a lifeguard. Basically, what I tell people is if you're gonna go to the pool, make sure you've got your meds with you, you've got some type of ID with you, and you bring that on the pool side and you tell the head lifeguard, okay, you know what, I've got these kinds of allergies or whatever, and I could have either anaphylactic shock or I could have some type of asthma attack, or maybe, I've got my heart attack medication here with me. If there's something, my emergency contact number is there, my allergies are there. If 911 has to be activated, all the information is there. So basically, I know it sounds like a lot, but for me as a lifeguard, when I had patrons coming up to me with that information, it's like, you know what? Thank you for letting me know. We're going to keep an eye on you. We're going to know that you're safe. You can swim safely here. And if something happens, we know what to do. As opposed to, oh my God, there's something wrong with this person. We don't know. Not everyone is comfortable doing that. I understand. And for privacy reasons and confidentiality, maybe some people don't want to disclose that. However, just know that you've got some lifeguards that are there looking to make sure that all the swimmers are safe in that area, but that if you come in even more prepared to help them keep you safe, that's part of your own individual safety plan. What do you have to say about that?
Well, as somebody, again, I don't talk publicly about my actual position that I hold as for income. But I definitely would say that every time, because every pool is different and every environment is different, whether it's an outdoor pool or indoor pool, and also you have different levels of experience of lifeguards as well. So personally, as somebody who's been around pools for decades and spent time not in pools and then in pools and international pools as well, I do agree with you. Going up and telling people if you have conditions or you have things, please go and tell people right away. If you do not have a medical alert bracelet that's literally on you and you have medications or other things, unless you have a full description, even some people who are on the spectrum, sorry, on the have different abilities on the spectrum and different abilities, sometimes have little cards saying I'm afraid of dark deep water. If I panic, please come and talk to me, do not approach me. Simply having, even if you're not comfortable talking to people, simply having things that are written down to give them an experience of it, whether it's behaviors or medical conditions that they need to be aware of. But just also remember that some lifeguards will react differently to different things based on their own experiences. So if all of a sudden you have an experience where you see people are being a little extra cautious around you, please don't take it personally. Please take it as that they care and that this is how they are dealing with it, because everybody deals with different types of these things differently. But especially in Canada, everything's certified by the Canadian
We're
the
all life
lifeguarding
saving.
yeah, the International Life Saving Society, or the Life Saving Society of Canada, and we are prevent the as a trained lifeguard, they are preventers. They are definitely preventers, and they when they're working, they're constantly getting after people, not because there is an emergency, but because they're trying to prevent an emergency. If you go down to U.S. or to other countries, and I don't know which countries, but I do know like U.S. And also some private pools, maybe potentially in like Alberta and stuff, they might be more reactors where they react to bad situations. But and so again, if you go to somewhere and you tell them this and you just say, listen, I'm only doing this because I want you to know that this is like what happens. So 99% nothing's going to happen to me, but this is what, so it's again prevention. It's a very different model to some reaction. There is also parts in the world where I believe that if it's deemed too dangerous for the life, like it might not be dangerous for you to go and swim in a urban or wild area. And thankfully, urban swimming has exploded around the world. It's
Especially with the
getting
movement of swimmable cities. Yep.
swimmable
Yep.
cities, which is again for everywhere around the world, and a lot of them are working on safety because they in Vancouver they're going to be, hopefully North Vancouver, they'll be building a swim platform. But the point is that there is a lot. Yeah, so basically making people aware of stuff, and you have to remember that they're going to take that information in a different way, and I just think people really need to understand that. So if you feel discriminated against or feel a little awkward, just realize it's not you. We are very lucky in Canada. Even our water quality standards are quite conservative. It's about trying to make people aware and then making it a lot easier on the rescuers. And I was sorry trying to finish. In some parts of the world, they do not allow you to swim because it would be more dangerous. They do not have the ability to rescue somebody. I know that has been out of topic, which is why I think that there's like Urban Swim in the US and lots of other organizations that are trying to fight for the fact that if paramedics, firefighters, lifeguards are given the education that things are actually not that, or if there's certain things that are built for swimmers, it makes it a lot, you mitigate the risk in a lot of ways. And you're opening up swimmable, swim, drink, fish, swimmable, drinkable water. They work around the world. They're behind the swim platform in North Vancouver, trying to make things accessible, because when you have cleanable, drinkable, fishable, or even fishable and swimmable water, it's better for everybody, including the industries that are located right at the waterfronts around there.
Mm.
And the education, prevention and education, even though that doesn't always seem to create action and change, that makes it a lot more healthier. And then, like, I raise money for mental health. You get people in the water, even if it doesn't feel great when you're in the water. It's, oh my God, you feel like $1,000,000 when you get out. Not every
And
time, but for
yeah,
me, but
and that's whether people go in the pool or open water. Open water has even more of this effect, I think, on our spiritual and emotional well-being. But for some people, just getting to the pool because of accessibility is easier, and that's okay. And then you've got lifeguards there. So if someone is not as confident in the water, there's, you're limiting the variables that could make it more difficult. I'm going to end on this one thing for this part, because I really want to emphasize how important it is for people to have their own swim safety plan, even if they're going to a pool. I've had to deal with 2 heart attacks, epileptic attack, a couple of spinal. Like, it sounds like I worked at some crazy pool, but no, it was 2 summers in the summer pool and about 5 years in a single indoor pool that was a very small community. So I'm only one lifeguard. How many events are all of these lifeguards exposed to? And so if we can bridge the gap, meaning how fast a lifeguard can address the situation and bring 911 in and properly assess the person and get to the first aid and put the person in the right position or whatever, then it means that is increasing the chances of survival of a person. So I've had a number of different things happen. But one is my very first shift as a lifeguard in an outdoor pool. I'm sitting on my chair for my very first shift, right? A little nervous. And this very pregnant woman comes up to me and she taps me on the ankle because I was up on the lifeguard chair. And she tells me, listen, I am 2 weeks overdue. And here's my pager. And if something happens to me, know that it's pre-programmed. You just have to press on this and we'll everything will be like, my husband will come and we'll go straight to the hospital, or we'll figure it out. But the pager is pre-done for you. The water is the only place I want to be right now. I could tell you that whole shift I was on the edge of my chair, just making sure I had my eyes on that woman. But that's the whole point, right? She came in, she had a plan, she told me about it. That was my, like I said, a life-changing experience for me because it was my first shift ever. And here I've got this, and she was a doctor too. So she was like, don't worry, we kind of know what's happening here, but everything's going to be okay. So that really helped me to understand, you know what? An individualized safety plan is critical no matter where we go. It could be at the local pool, it could be in an open water. So now we're going to move to open water. So safety plans for open water, whether people are walking in and just standing with their feet in the water or they're like going out for a full swim. In terms of safety plan, what would you suggest are some of the key elements here? Because you mentioned some of them from your Lake Okanagan swim already, right? The conditions, the people around you, like there were so many things, right? So if you didn't feel well, you had plan A, B, C, D. So in terms of outdoor swimming, open water swimming, what are some of the key elements for you?
Um, well, like I'm gonna like it's I learned a lot of this from growing up backpacking and camping and hiking, and I think if there probably way more people that have done it. I believe that a lot of and some I mean part of the big demographic of people wanting to do open waters, they're already adventurers already, and hopefully, I mean, unfortunately we have many deaths in the mountains every year, but something that I learned from very young is when you go, every time you go, you start looking at somewhere where you want to go, whether it's a new beach or a beach you've known before, you or beach or rock area, wherever where there's water in front of you. Um, And especially in BC, where we're getting more and more people wanting to do more kind of adventurous dip. This other than, dips are one thing in the shallow little pond, like in Lynn Valley, versus trying to go up, do a little swim up Indian Arm or Belle Clara Park, is always when you first show up, or when you are starting to think about this, you're thinking about your environment. You're looking at forecasts like you would on any, if you're planning for a hike. Look at the forecast, look at the time you're about to go. If you don't understand tides and currents, ask somebody, ask
Mhm.
people that you know that have been there before, even if it might not be the answer you want to hear, because I have offered advice many times and people are like, oh, I'm just going to try it on my own. Great, do it. But talk to people, even if you know somebody who's a local fisherman. Marathon Swimming Federation will say the exact same thing. Or if you do want to hire a boat or a kayak to come with you on a small adventure, which is totally
Mhm.
doable, look at the area, look at the boat rental companies, look at what is in that area. Is there a yacht club? Is it rocky? Is it sandy? Evaluate your environment first and foremost. Your environment being the very things that are changing, like the weather, and then also your physical environment. The physical environment right in front of you. Weather is also physical. So it's like, and that's actually the first thing, even when they talk about, if you do any first standard first aid course, is evaluate your environment. You don't walk into a burning fire to rescue somebody. That's an environment that you would wait for an ambulance. You site survey, site situation evaluations first and foremost. Second of all, make sure you tell somebody that you're going somewhere. Do
Yeah,
not
yeah.
do some tell lots of people. You live
And just sorry,
alone.
just before
Yeah,
we move on to this part, going back to environment, air quality, number one, even before you head out the door, because it's forest fire smoke
season
season
right
right
now.
now. Like
Yeah.
air quality, if it's not good, you don't go. So you don't walk out of your home. And the second thing is water quality. So check your local municipal ratings for E. coli or any other kind of things like sewer overflow, right? If the sewers are overflowing because the rain is pouring down, you may not want to go into those waters. So there are different decisions. Like at the top of the list is really air quality, water quality, and then there's a whole, the aspect itself of easy entry, easy exit, accessibility. How far are from that environment? Like first aid, can lifeguards get to you? Can the firefighters get to you? Ambulance, and so on and so forth. And now you're mentioning
Well,
the second,
yeah.
tell someone. Yes.
Well, no, if I go back really quickly on that, what you were just saying,
Yes.
um, there isn't always water quality testings in some areas that you want to go in. So that's why I'm saying ask other people. Ask other people. I mean, Swim Guide does have this thing where they have swim footprints and sometimes people can input information, but ask people. Like a lot of us, in again, you don't know local swimmers. Yeah, maybe Google a marathon swimmer. They might know. I'm on a list of mentors for around the world. They might know. They might not know. They might not have exactly what you're looking for, but ask people. If it's near a city, if it's within an hour's drive of city urban, I bet you there's going to be somebody that's going to have already been there, even if it's more remote. So
Yeah,
just
and
ask other people. And yes, a fisherman might say, oh God, I would never swim in there, but still ask and do more than one resource. Sorry, I
I,
really get on people about this because you just it's I don't have my website's been half done. I don't the resources are not all there easy just to AI or Google right now. So keep asking people. If you're determined, keep asking people. You will find the solutions. Maybe you have to change your plans, but keep asking people. Sorry, what was the next
yeah,
topic? What was that?
but on AI and Google, because we kind of briefly talked about it, exchanged about it before we recorded. Do people, anyone listening, do not trust AI for your swim plan for a number of reasons. It can give you some good basic stuff, but you have to use your judgment and build from there, because there's some of the stuff that popped up on AI that was completely wrong. On water quality and talk to people, I totally agree with you, Jessi. And we cannot highlight enough the importance of people going in the water with other people. So there are all sorts of Facebook groups and WhatsApp groups that people can look for and will find. For example, Harrison Lake, I know some people who swim there because I ended up finding a group that was swimming in the Chilliwack area, and they also swim in Harrison Lake. So I'm in touch with them so that when I go to Harrison Lake, I know who to contact see if they want to come and swim with me. Where do they recommend it? Okay, great. And in exchange, they come and swim with me at Kitsilano. So you can do some exchanges like that with the swimmers, and it's a really, welcoming community. So don't hesitate to ask other people for, water conditions. Are they swimmable? But also, who can I go and swim with? And that you'll meet some pretty fantastic people that way. So Jessi,
Yeah.
you were going to say, tell someone where you're going. Totally agree with you.
So and
Whether
also,
whether
and
you're
whether or
alone or
not you have
not,
cell, yeah, and cell phone coverage is hit and miss. We live in mountains. We're sorry, this is hopefully going out to people in British Columbia. We live in mountains.
and
Cell service is on and off. Even you go around a corner. Oh my God! I mean, remember if you go to some Costco's, you can't get cell service because of big, in a big warehouse. Think about that with the mountains, where you go around the corner, you can't get cell service for a little bit. Yes, treat it if you're gonna the more remote or difficult the access, treat it like you're going on a wilderness hike or yeah, because I'm thinking those are probably what people would do the most. But anything it's like that, because yes, you can even use those spot trackers, you can do different things that will make you more aware. But some people I know will want to go for a hike and then go into a lake and swim, which is totally like fine. But just make sure you have something where people can find your whereabouts, because it might not just be aquatic, like an aquatic, like the Royal Marine Search and Canadian Search and Rescue. It might be more of a the
the
just the
mountain
regular search
rescuers.
and rescue, the
Mhm.
non-marine search and rescue. So please always do that, and don't shy away from it. I understand independence, you wanting to go on your own, but let somebody know where you're going. That was me and my dad couldn't read tides in the beginning. We didn't understand any of that, but we always told people where we were going and our time range of how when we would be back. So in that sense, and because we are over planners, especially people with kids, you bring extra snacks, bring more than what you need. Unfortunately, again, like I started mostly when I was less aware of it. I started with having kayak or a paddle boarder with me. That for me was imperative. I know some people will also like bring their paddle boards and like bring stuff on top of their paddle boards and stuff like that. But I'm just saying, the more higher you are in the water, the more you can
Mhm.
see and the more you can navigate. So I would
And
try
and
initially.
also the more visible you are to
You
other
are, and I would,
boaters.
yeah, because I would definitely try, if you're gonna try something and you want to do something really adventurous, try to go like to White Cliff or somewhere where you can try little mini adventures and pack everything, like and then or try little like experiments with different equipment, because I'm 10 years in and I'm still changing my equipment. We have a pretty good routine. It took me many years to get my nutrition right in terms of the powdered nutrition, because even people in the English Channel that were eating tons of sugar would be throwing up. It took me many, many years to get some of this stuff right, and I'm still swapping out equipment because technology's changed. Even seasick medications have changed over the years. Tylenol, Advil dosages generally stay the same, but just the way I treat them with my own muscles have changed. So that's the biggest thing, that I learned a lot of stuff in English Channel training when I went to Mallorca, over in Spain. I learned directly from English Channel swimmers in the very, very beginning, even if it was planning for a training swim, which would be a lot of people's regular swims, or maybe an event they're building up to. But I learned this stuff from directly, and I related it back to what I knew in British Columbia as safety preventative, that I learned from, God, I feel old now, but like 30 years ago, there was this kind of information out there. You just had to translate it to aquatics. So
Mhm.
that is so imperative if people are trying to find adventure, because I feel like the people on attend to your podcast might be the more adventure types. And also, I also am talking. I can say that I do the safety stuff for ISA Canada, which we are Ice Swimming International Ice Swimming Association, which we are trying to work really hard on getting more resources for ice swimmers. And we have now a safety checklist. We have more specifics that we have been giving out to our people. And if you're ever interested in getting more information on that, please email ISA
ISA
Canada.
Canada. Yeah,
Yeah, they
and
have lots
I'll
of
make sure
information.
I'll make sure if they have a link to something that's online, I'll make sure to
That
include it in the
and
show notes.
I wrote some of those plans and that stuff, because we shared it already. That stuff is all again based on everything I've learned from marathoning, from running events, not me, well, me personally and other people that have contributed and edited it, because it's the same thing we just talked about. It's evaluate, look at the weather, evaluate your situation, tell somebody where you're going. These were presuming that you already have people there, but it's the
Mm-hmm.
exact, it's very detailed and has exact, and you can apply some of those plans to, let's say you're just trying to do like, oh, maybe the water's like 10 degrees or 12 degrees and the air's really chilled. You know, if the colder the air is, the faster you're probably going to want to get changed when you get out, because we can get I'm not going to say after drop, but like
Yeah.
thermal cooling quite fast, even in the middle of summer if the air chill is out there. And if you're, especially if you're in altitude and you're going for a hike and you wanted to go for a quick little swim where the air is either maybe warm, all of a sudden it gets cooler in the evening and you need to get out fast. You don't need to bring, you can bring wetsuits. You don't need to bring wetsuits, but you need to have lots of warm kit. I carried so much warm clothes. Like so many years. I carry so much stuff with me when I go somewhere, whether I leave it on the
Mhm.
side or bring it with me.
Right.
It's insane.
And so basically for people listening, talk to people who know the body of water you want to go in, take their knowledge and see how you can apply it to your situation, and then create that personalized swim plan for you when you're getting ready to go into that water. I want to stress something. um Not only am I always saying to people, please don't go swim alone, because that's just asking for disaster, but also try to make sure you always have a swim buddy with you, meaning a tow float, where it's like a belt that you have around your waist, and it's got a little bit of a tail, and then you've got an inflatable float that's behind you, and many of them have a part of it is a dry bag, so you can have your wallet, your keys, so that you're not going to be stranded if someone leaves with your things from the beach. But wallet, keys, medication, anything that you absolutely need, maybe a pair of flip-flops, so that if you have to exit, you have to leave the water, or current was so strong, you started at point A and you end up in point B. Well, you can get out, put those little flip-flops on, and then at least walk back, and maybe even a light towel in there, so that you can dry yourself up, remove the bathing suit, and walk dry. Yes, you were going to say something,
I was going
Jessi.
to add, sorry, I wanted to add in there, because again, these are accessible items that you do not have to spend a lot of money on. Clip your shoes to the outside. There's always a bit of a rope on the swim buddies. People, I'm not asking people to spend more money, but they're getting better and better at making these swim buddy, or they're actually more commonly known as tow floats or swim
Mhm.
buoys. If you ask somebody in America what a swim buddy is, sometimes they'll say, well, that's my friend over there. Swim buddy is one brand.
Yes.
Get a lot of the newer swim buddies have little handles on them. Clip your shoes, get even a piece of rope or something, clip it or attach it to the outside of your bag. Biggest recommendation I can tell people, do that. It's, yeah, it might create a tiny bit more drag, but especially if you're in a spot where you do not know where the rocks are, where the barnacles are, it can really save you, because you can put on your shoes before you get into too deep water and end up crashing if you get pushed by the waves or any current. And they're getting better and better with tow floats. Red Paddle, even though I'm not sponsored, but Red Paddle just came up with a brand new tow float that's reversible. Yes, it's $145, but they're trying to make equipment now that can take, first of all, can take a bit of rough and tough, and is making it a lot more accessible, so people, especially in urban environments, don't need to look like a neon person walking through, where the outside is like a dark blue and the inside is a reversible neon. So remember to bring all, and I just keep emphasizing with water temperature and air temperature and changing climate, that you have extra clothes with you. But clipping your
Mhm.
shoes to the outside, I find it might not, it makes me a little, it might create a little more drag, but oh my God, it saved my butt. And I do wear like a Croc style shoes. I actually think Birkenstocks are even better because they last longer. But if you have flip flops, great. But if you're going in somewhere more remote or more crackly, I have something that actually covers the outside of my toes. I don't like the water shoes. Having loose fit, like we say with loose fitting clothes, sometimes loose fitting shoes can be easier to get in and out. But if you have nothing else, yeah. If you can't clip it to the outside, throw in a pair of water shoes on the inside of your bag,
Mhm.
just acknowledging that you may or may not have to be treading water a little more to get those shoes out of your bag without dumping everything in the water. Those are just my own personal experiences from adventure swimming a lot.
Right. And in terms of entering a zone where, and I mean, I'm being very specific here, even kits, but because this is more marine ocean stuff, and for those who are listening who are not in our area, apologies for all of this, but it could apply. So let's say you're going into a lake with a lot of rocks. Entry is difficult, but after that, you know that you're going to be okay to swim. Same thing in the ocean. You know, maybe the tide is going down. You've checked your tide chart. You know that there's not going to be huge swing difference. I learned something when I was in Seychelles, Jessi, and I'm going to share Corey's tip with everybody. So Corey, I hope you're listening. She showed me how she takes one of those shopping bags with, there's a handle and then there's a bag itself, and it's one of those recycled plastic things. So it's not the fabric thing, but it's really recycled plastic, more like an IKEA bag.
Mhm.
You put some big rocks in there so that it kind of stands at the bottom of the water, and then you have a longer rope with a little bit of a float on top, and with a carabiner, you hook your shoes to it. So what that enables you to do is that you walk in the water with your Crocs on, for example, and then when you're at a height, let's say about, just above waist height, you remove your shoes, you attach them to that floating device, and you've got your bag that's at the bottom because it's weighed down with the rocks. You go for your swim, you come back, you get your shoes, you put them back on, you grab your bag, and you leave. And we even have a little, she gave me one of those tags that, please don't bring me back to shore. My owner is out at sea and is gonna be coming back. And so I think that was brilliant. And I mean, I've been swimming now for almost 6 years in open water, and I did not know this trick. So I'm sharing it. And this is actually part of a swimming safety plan. So if I had that in the trunk of my car, I could have, I can just use it wherever I'm going, because usually the car is parked not far. Or if you're going on a hike and then you're going to be going in the water, then maybe it's easier to just clip it to the tow float. But there are different ways of doing it, and then you find the way
Yeah.
that will work for your own safety plan, basically.
Yeah. And that is a very good very like innovative idea.
All
I just say because again, I've had some interesting experiences, even especially near Victoria, where I had to get out prematurely because the current was pushing me and I had to get out. So that is a really good, if you have like a place that you know the water and maybe it's less variable conditions, like less prone to change. That sounds like a great idea. I just have been in, or like White Cliff, for instance, there's
Mhm.
some really strong currents where I have not been able to get back to even where my people are. My stuff might be safe, my people might be there, but maybe I have to get out earlier and I have to walk back because the current is so strong.
Yeah.
Whether the tide's going in or out, it doesn't matter. Tide and surface current do not always correlate. Really important to know that. If you are going to an area you do not know, I highly recommend you kind of keep, even if it's just literally your keys, one tiny little towel, and a pair of shoes. I still think shoes are almost next to your keys because you need to be able to be we're land animals. You need to be able to get back to where you are, and I think that might have even happened even with Lake Okanagan, that across the lakes when people had to get out. I'm not saying you wear shoes
Yes.
for a race, but they had to get out and they had to walk back to the start because the current was so strong. So that's the
Yeah.
only, I think it's a great idea, but I'm just saying that's the only reason why I personally always, even if I like when like even if kid like even kids pool, okay, I might go in and pay and leave my stuff there in the locker and then come back. Kids pool is a little different, but if there's a pool or location where you can keep your stuff, because I don't have a car, or somewhere with your car, just remember, yeah, the shoes are just like we have some sandy beaches, but predominantly in
Rocky.
BC it's rocky. We have bigger, some big barnacles compared, especially like Ireland and
Yeah.
all these other places. It's not a sandy beach. We're not like well, even Southern California, or sorry, all of California. There's some sandy beaches, there's some not. So we live in a beautiful wild northern hemisphere temperate rainforest with some of the most beautiful water in the world, especially in the wintertime. But yeah, it's really difficult because again, there's a lot of really good swimmers I know. I even was listening to a recent swimmer who had won across the bay challenge many times, and she's She's a bit older, but she's really fast. And I didn't realize that she won't swim in the ocean because it's the water's not clear for her. And I said, but that's not a measure of water quality clarity. And she says, I know, I still don't like it. And
Yeah.
she's won. She's so fast, and she just doesn't want to. She's not an adventure person like I am.
Or
So,
she just doesn't have the confidence.
or
And
she
there's
just doesn't want to. I
yeah,
know her.
yeah,
She just
that
doesn't
too
want
too.
to.
But basically, and I think that's why we've had so many drownings in Canada, is that overconfidence and the lack of skills. Or the conditions change midway. So you were saying you had to get out of the water when you were at Whitecliff, da da da. And in that race last weekend where that person died, all of a sudden in the middle of the race, the winds picked up, the current picked up, and it pushed everyone north. And they think so far anyway, from what I'm reading, they think that's how it happened for this person. It could have been he fought, we don't know, but let's assume he fought the current and could have felt anxious, maybe had a heart attack, who knows? And then things happen. So always have a plan B. And where are you going to exit if you are all alone? How do you deal with currents? And when you're in a race, you never think, oh, I need to have my own swim plan, but we are all responsible for our own person. And you hope that the organization will be able to provide a safe environment for you, but it doesn't mean that it's going to be safe for you specifically. I've been in a few of those instances where I'm like, thank goodness I've got a lot of confidence from my ocean swimming, because right now I feel like I'm in the middle of the lake, or it's an organized event. I'm in the middle of the lake and I feel like I am alone here. I can't see anyone. And so it can feel a little unnerving. And it was right after swimming through some algae. So let me tell you that when I talk about this story to other people, they're like, "Oh my God, I would have freaked out." And I'm like, "Well, that's why we have to make sure that we're confident in our skills. And if we are kind of confident, but we just have to make sure we're not overconfident. And so know our limits, listen to our body, and know how to calm ourselves down as well. I think it's also part of the safety plan, right? Like what are some of the inner thoughts that we have to keep going? Like breathe, focus, have fun, just raise the hand if you need help, right? Call over a boat. And if you're going out with some friends and you're in a situation, try and get the attention of other people around. Tow floats, all of them should have a whistle. The Swim Buddy brand has an integrated whistle onto the buckle, but they also have, if you buy it directly from them, I just found out, they also send you a separate whistle. So, that a whistle, make sure you call for help. Don't hesitate to call for help. And that's also
Yes.
part of how do you escalate it to the next level, which is what you had to do in Lake Okanagan for your own swim there, where you guys were looking, okay, not feeling well. Okay, next level, what are we going to do? So let's try this, let's try that, da, da, da. Still not well, escalated next level. And so there are decisions, this like a decision-making tree that you had other people there to help you with, Jessi. But when we are by ourselves and we're starting to feel a little bit of that anxiety, maybe not panic, but just a little bit of anxiety going on, we may not be in the best frame of mind to make the right decisions. And that's why it's so important to not be alone.
Yes, and I again because I go to San Francisco on a regular basis, and I go to other events. Um, uh, sorry, I go to other events on a regular. Well, I try to. I went to SCAR in Arizona. You get very confident. The more you do this, you can make bigger mistakes. we
Yes.
we do tons of I love going to these events with people that are just as, I'm going to say, not necessarily more experienced, but just as experienced, have different types of experiences, because it humbles me in my decision making. It does take a bit now for me to, I will absorb information. I always want to hear constructive criticism. I want to, you listen to people's complaints, and the small amount of positive. I mean, people are always very kind to me personally, but positive feedback on what we did right and what we did wrong in terms of organizing everything from 5 people, 10 people, 20 people, up to 200 to 300 people. So it's really, really important to remember that we are climate change. Just think of that, climate change.
Mm-hmm.
Global warming, yes, but climate change, gusts of wind, changing an environment. That's very already, if you look at stuff about sailing and paddling in BC, it's very typical and it's only going to get worse. Our sea
Right.
levels are rising, but it's not so much about the warming and sea levels rising. It's this crazy variability. I,
Yeah.
planning like boating out around the bay challenge last year, and the wind picked up, and we were like, "Oh my god, we're out here!" And we saw a sea lion at Kitsilano Beach, and nobody ever sees sea lions at Kitsilano Beach. This is like at 5:30 in the morning, and we're like, "We can't. We're not going to tell people we just saw a sea lion because people will freak out." But couldn't get a picture because they love hanging out not long for a picture. It almost looked like a walrus. Like it was ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
yeah. And
yeah,
just
so yeah,
by the way, that sea lion says hi. I saw him yesterday morning in the water. Like the
it
first
was
my first sea lion in a year.
ridiculous. I know that was, and this is like over a year ago, but I'm telling you, it changes in the middle of a swim. We had high winds on that morning last year around the bay. It died down, it settled out. I had chop at 1 o'clock in the morning. The winds were blowing in the middle of the night at Lake Okanagan. Generally, especially on California coast, Catalina channel, which is a great channel if people want to learn if they before they want to do English. I did it after English, but it's a bit cheaper than English channel, even though it's still really expensive, but it's closer to home, and a much higher success rate than the English channel. They do most of their swims start at nighttime because the wind is low in California, but that could change over time. We are only as good as our last swim or barely even season.
Yes, yes. And that's why it's so important to your point, keep an open mind and always learn and always, and like you did with your team, always after it's done, look at review what
Debrief,
happened. Exactly.
debrief.
Debrief, debrief, debrief. Basically,
Debrief,
that's what it
debrief,
is.
debrief, because we all have changing lives. Like I work a job where I have to be constantly adapting and changing, whether it's scheduling, whether it's environments, and you have to be just get better at evaluating and understanding that I had a 16-page safety plan, but also include lists for the swim. And it was more of an experiment to see because I was bringing on new people. I had very experienced people, new people, and we had it printed out. People read it. Some people did this and that. At the end of the day, when things went to back and forth, we had to just pull out all the stops. And because I had a very, very, very experienced crew who were very experienced with me personally and have had to mitigate risks in the past, it's not about, it's like again, if you do your standard first aid or national lifeguarding certificate, they do emphasize in the training, at least with the lifeguarding stuff, when you get into guarding or if you get to higher level of first aid, not necessarily that you're getting more detailed in the drugs or things you can give people, but that you have to keep reevaluating your signs and symptoms, and signs and
Yes.
symptoms of people and signs and symptoms of the environment are constantly changing. So it's constantly adapting to your environment because especially with lifeguards, they're not doctors at all. They're just looking at the signs and symptoms and writing everything down and trying to make the
They're,
basic educated decision. But I've seen, even as a bystander, I've seen things where it's like, it looks like a heart attack. Oh, but it's something else. Or a paramedic comes in going, oh, this is not a spinal. This is, I don't want to scare people, but the more you know, the less you know in many respects.
yes,
And it's
yes.
gaining experience from that. And a lot of experienced people will do one thing and then somebody else who has different experiences will say something else. But the point is that I think that my team did a really good job at pulling out all the stops. And I also, as a swimmer, I was obedient. I said, I'm not comfortable with this, or just give me some white bread because I'm pretty sure I can keep that down. Or I took a pill knowing I think I'm going to vomit it, but it wasn't going to physically do me any actual harm. And then we crushed up a pill and I was able to keep it down. So with less experienced swimmers, you really, more than anything, you really need to trust your crew and let them go through that process. It's when people refuse to drink or refuse things, it gets a
Mhm.
little bit more difficult. But at the same time, I refuse stuff because I said, this will make me sick. I need to not take this right this second. In instances where I was way less ill. So
Right. And so in this case, you had some decision making for you as a swimmer and the decision making made for you by
a crew,
the
but
guy,
that's
the
because of my
crew. Yeah.
experience.
Yeah. But I just want to
That's yeah.
highlight that when we do these events or challenges that we're doing by ourselves, we might be the only person swimming and we might have a kayak beside us or a couple of other crafts. It's really important as a swimmer to tell the other person who is higher up on the water, you are my eyes. I'm relying on you in the kayak or whatever, so that I follow you and you tell me if there's something wrong. And if I need to be pulled out, you make that decision. I will not fight you for the decision. I will obey and I'm out. I think it has to be clear. And maybe that's what I say to my guides. And I'm like, I'm totally okay with it. If there's a big piece of debris, you need to stop me, or there's like a field of jellyfish, and I could die because of anaphylactic shock, out of there. Like that, I totally understand. But there might be some other decisions that I might not understand, and that's I'm okay with. But as swimmers, I think it's really important to have that communication with the crew, with the guides, and to make sure that the two agree, or the whole team agrees on the way.
Yeah.
But that's also part of the safety plan,
Well,
right?
yeah, and that's part of also if you and I will get some better resources for you guys, and if you do refer at least to the Marathon Swimming Federation, that is chain of command. That a lot of these things you're talking about goes back into fundamentals of safety, which is if the pilot or the kayaker or anybody who's above you, and predominantly if you have a boat, it's usually the pilot meaning the person. You might just hire somebody randomly drive a boat, but who help plan the swim and is actively adapting adapting during navigation, because those were the pilots, navigation, boat drivers are not always they're not always exactly as I define them, but that person, the chain of command is usually that person has the ultimate authority on the swim. A secondary to that, observers, people that are swim specifics, also have authority on the swim. But that again, what was very, and I would like to publish eventually something with this. I just don't have time right now because I'm planning another swim to try and save my own mental health. Having all this stuff written down now in a much clearer format to what is currently being used, or the requirements that are currently being asked by the Marathon Swimming Federation and other organizations that you just don't necessarily know about. But this stuff is extremely imperative to understanding that it is the person on the top who's the highest in the water, highest visibility in the water, tends to have the highest authority. But if they're not as experienced, hopefully you pick somebody who is willing to negotiate. Because I have worked with pilots who are very good fishermen or very good sailors who are not willing to compromise. And you need to pick people on these things that are willing to adapt. I like long distance sailors. That has its own set of challenges, but you have to find people that are willing to adapt and give yourself a second chance. There has been more successful English Channel crossings because of the, I think, adaptation. But then again, people do have to get pulled when they don't want to get pulled, because so be open-minded. And in the beginning, just go through experience. And I was very fortunate not to have major problems until the last 2 years, where I've had some, like I had a not so great experience with a pilot a couple years ago, and we heard about a lot of people with different experiences with pilots. We were always very fortunate not to have these experiences, but learning and talking to people, not just reading stuff online, physically calling people, talking to people, we learned so much of what we could and cannot do. And unfortunately, the last 2 years, we've also been learning from our own experiences. So it's hit or miss, because people always ask me about pilots. I fortunately enough have one guy that's been amazing with me for the last many, many years. And I just
That's
want to copy and paste him. I want
that's
to copy and
Gunner,
paste
right?
him. Yeah, Gunnar
Yeah,
Johnson. I want to
yeah.
copy and paste him, because he is amazing. But he has decades of experience of things going wrong.
Yeah. And you also want to
Decades.
copy and paste your own dad, who's in a kayak and who's he's an amazing. Actually, I'd love to have him on the podcast so that he can talk about the how the learning curve was for him in terms of kayaking next to you and adapting and all of
Yeah,
that and the
I'm a
communications.
spoiled
But
brat. I'm a
yeah,
spoiled
yeah,
brat, but
you
I'm
are
also
spoiled.
single. And I've been a little stubborn, but I this journey is not over. It's been a very tough 10 days
Yeah.
trying to mentally get through the fact that I spent many thousands of dollars. I mean, thankfully we raised $10,000 for the organization for the Canadian Mental Health and One Sky. It's the Foundry locations. Sorry, I'm bringing this back in, but the Foundry locations, which are centers they're trying to build for youth mental health. I have an amazing family. I came back to Canada And all they wanted me to do, both my parents have been divorced for many years. All they wanted me to do is get back into exercise and do stuff. And it was like, that is exactly what I got into. I just got into the weirdest sport ever. And my dad has never, ever, he barely kayaked before we started doing it 10 years ago. And
Oh, I
he
didn't know
just,
that.
he barely kayaked.
I thought he
Yeah,
had
he
some
did a bit.
experience. Oh my God.
Oh, we knew nothing.
Oh my God.
But
Okay, so I
he's
have
been on every boat. Like he knows such
we
a weird perspective. My
we
dad's
gotta get
amazing.
him on the podcast
Yeah.
because
Anyways, but
I'm gonna
I'm running out of time though right
yeah,
now.
yeah, but I'm gonna finish with this quick story. When I did Osoyos, I did 5K in Osoyos 2 weeks ago. Adore, my husband, was my kayak guide for the very first time, and we have little kayaking experience, but we did our L1 Ocean in March. But Adore hadn't really been practicing much on the kayak, so we're like, yeah, okay, well, we'll see what happens. And let's just say that it wasn't necessarily the best experience because conditions were also extremely challenging. They were definitely not for a beginner kayaker. To give people an idea, there were, I think Dora told me on the 26 swimmers that we were on doing the 5K, there were at least 10 guides. And the 10 guides, there were 2 or 3 in kayaks. The rest were all on SUPs, stand-up paddle boards. No one was standing on their paddle boards. They were all sitting, kneeling. They couldn't stand because the conditions were too rough. And Adora couldn't keep, like, between the wind, the waves, the current, the chop, it was just too much. And I mean, I swallowed about 5 liters of water during that swim. My toe float got half a liter of water in there. Like that's the kind of conditions. So you got to learn and you've got to work with the person. But I definitely want to talk to your dad about how he took on that learning curve. Anyway, Jessi, I know you got to go. I
Yeah.
want to say a huge thank you. I hope people understand that basically just have a swim plan, whatever it looks like for people. Sometimes it's in writing, sometimes it's in your head, but no matter what, make sure you assess the environment, the conditions, make sure you tell someone about your plan, and make sure you know that you're ready yourself. So thank you, Jessi. And I want to remind people that you're listening to The Coolest Journey with me, Hélène Caron, as your host. And if you enjoyed the show, please subscribe to the Coolest Journey newsletter via the website coolestjourney.com and subscribe as well to the podcast via YouTube, Spotify, or Apple. You can also listen live on radio at cfmu.ca every Friday. It is Pacific time is 9:30 to 10 and Eastern time 12:30 to 1. Jessi, I wish you all the best with your upcoming swims. Thanks again.
Thank you.
And I wish everyone a happy Friday, wishing everyone health, energy, and the coolest journey of your life. Bye.